Hey there again, my name is Colin Brown, licensing instructor, licensed broker here in the state of North Carolina in the Raleigh-Durham area. I hope this video finds you doing well. This is the second video in a series on disclosures that are required here in our amazing state. First video was on what we call RPODs, the Residential Property Owners and Association Disclosure Statement. It is required in almost all residential real estate transactions. This document that we're looking at right here is also required in every circumstance where the RPODs is required. And this is the Mineral, Oil, and Gas Rights Mandatory Disclosure Statement. Some of us in my generation wish they had reordered that, because when we abbreviate it, the mineral, oil, and gas, we call it the MOG. I wish they had ordered it oil, mineral, and gas, and then we could call it the OMG, right? But even still, emoji, right? Okay, anyway, this document, as I said, is required for pretty much all residential real estate transactions in this state. What is this thing all about? Well, not only do you own the land and the improvements, the fixtures, the buildings on the land when you own property, you also own the rights to whatever's inside of the dirt, right? Just think about Jed Clampett, right? He owned the land, all of a sudden up from the ground came a bumbling crude. Oil, that is. In this circumstance, in the state of North Carolina, it's possible to actually either sell or rent out the rights to whatever's in your ground. Someone could come in and mine it. I know for the average property owner, that's like, what? You have like half an acre, a third of an acre, and you're like, why would you ever want to do? But there are cases where someone might have property out in the mountains, and they have several hundred acres, and they can go and mine it and find precious gems. They could find coal. They could make money, make profit from whatever's inside the ground. You could also have beneath a large chunk of land a natural gas deposit. And it's because of this, really, that this document was put into place several years ago and made required. Well, how can this come into play? You may be familiar with the concept of fracking, right? Where oil companies go in, gas company goes in, and they go in from the side and they dig down and access a natural gas or oil deposit that's below multiple properties. There's also a Matt Damon movie out there, I can't remember what it's called, where he's trying to go around and convince people to sign away their rights to what's below their house. Anyway, a builder here in central North Carolina not too long ago bought a large chunk of land with the plan to subdivide it, build a nice large subdivision with several hundred homes. And what they did was a little sneaky. This builder discovered that there was a natural gas deposit beneath this subdivision that they were planning on building. The builder illegally retained the rights to that gas deposit and went on to sell those properties. Came out several years later, a lot of the property owners somehow found out that there was this gas deposit and that they had actually sold or not even been given those rights when they bought their new home from this builder, and made for a big lawsuit. Builder had to give those rights back and pay some penalties, from what I understand. And as a result of that and several other cases, it became mandatory for us to disclose. So let's take a closer look at what this document is all about. Where this is where the seller is disclosing to future buyers whether or not they are aware that a previous owner, number one, is talking about a previous owner, has the previous owner severed mineral rights. The first three are about mineral rights. The next three are about oil rights. So question one is about previous owner. Question two, has the seller themselves severed their mineral rights? And then question number three is, does the seller intend to sever their rights prior to transferring to a new owner? Now, most sellers can speak about the time that they've owned the property. Yeah, I've not severed it. I don't plan to sever it. So numbers 2 and 3, they'll normally check no. However, most sellers don't want to be held liable, legally speaking, for something that a previous owner may or may not have done. So most of the time we will see number 1 and number 4 with no representation. And that's why it's actually offered only for those. The seller cannot check no representation if they have severed or plan to sever. They must disclose that information. So as I mentioned, numbers 1, 2, and 3 are about mineral rights. Numbers 4, 5, and 6 are about oil and gas rights. And when a buyer is submitting an offer on a property, not only do they need to submit the offer, we normally use a standard Form 2T, offer to purchase and contract. They also must submit the RPODS, Residential Property Owners and Association Disclosure Statement, and this document, and they must sign an initial. So the buyer, this can get a little bit messy when you're working with buyers on electronic signature formats like dotloop and DocuSign, because these lines are actually very close together and you end up with tiny little initial stamps on there, but it's okay. It's still legal. If you have 2 or 3 buyers, it gets really cramped, but still fine. Buyer must initial every single one of those, having checked off what the seller has disclosed. And there's a note here to purchasers. And anytime you see a note, this disclosure is published by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, by the way. If you want access to it, the public has free access to it through ncrec.gov, in addition to all other disclosures that may be required in a transaction in North Carolina. This is not restricted to somebody who's in the Realtors Association. This is not a realtor's form. But anyway, this note says, if the owner does not give this document to you, and by the time you make an offer, you may, under certain circumstances, cancel your offer, get out of the contract, and potentially get back whatever monies you have put on the line, be them due diligence fee and or earnest money deposit. That's for another video, and in fact, that's going to end up being its own series of videos when we talk about what is this whole earnest money and due diligence fee, and how does this play out when we're making an offer. That's for another video, so stay tuned for that, and I look forward to seeing you there. Again, this is Colin Brown with Keller Williams. See you on the next one.